Hello, and welcome to the first video of a multi-part series that I plan on doing as we explore church history, century by century, starting with the first century in this video. Now, this won't be a deep dissertation on history, but rather a view into what the Christian church believed, how it made decisions, who was a member of the church, and then ask you if you would have belonged in this church at that point in time in history. So, Catholics and Protestants, I'll be asking, would you have been considered a Christian or a heretic at that time? What church would you have gone to in order to settle disputes on faith and morals? Today, a Christian can believe all sorts of things, go to any number of Christian churches, and still be called a Christian. Well, was that always the case? That's what I'd like all of you to think about in this video series. And my hope for you Catholics is that after each of these videos, you'll be even more confident in your great faith. So let's begin with the first century. In the first century, we have the Bible as our primary source for what the church believed based on what they wrote down in the New Testament. These beliefs in this table and the corresponding Bible verses are slanted heavily toward Catholicism, I'll admit. And I can do that because it's my video. But to be fair, it is my contention, and this is what they believed based on what they wrote, and I will back that up in every century as we move forward in time in future videos. The Catholic Church would contend that the first century church clearly believed in the Trinity, that Jesus is fully man and fully God, the Eucharist, the necessity of baptism, that we are saved by faith in Jesus working in love. Jesus built his church and gave it authority and protected it, that Peter had a primary role due to giving him the keys alone, and that Mary was the mother of Jesus and therefore the mother of God. There was one council during the first century, as written about in Acts 15, where the church decided that newly baptized Gentiles into the Christian faith did not have to be circumcised. In this first century, there were 5 popes. So Catholics don't believe Protestants who will tell you that apostolic succession was an invention or that there was no such thing as the primacy of Peter, as the first century church acted otherwise. St. Peter was the first pope. He was succeeded by St. Linus, and when he died, he was succeeded by St. Cletus, who was succeeded by St. Clement, and finally in 97 AD by St. Evaristus. They all made major authoritative decisions during their time as pope, and detailed in the table that you'll see, and no one other than heretics rejected or even questioned their authority or position of power. There were 3 people who were excommunicated in the first century as detailed in the New Testament: Simon Magus by Peter, and Hymenaeus and Alexander by Paul. No one questioned their authority to decide who was and wasn't a Christian, and to make these decisions for the entire Christian community because everyone knew that they had God-given authority. As for heresies, there were 2 major ones: circumcisers, which the Council of Jerusalem in Acts 15 addressed, and Gnosticism, which believed that all matter is evil, and thus Jesus couldn't have been both true God and true man. These are heresies that the church had to deal with at the time. As detailed in the Bible, but also through sacred tradition as well, there were many people who we know were aligned with the Christian church in the first century. In addition to well-known members like Mary and the apostles, there was Prisca, Veronica, and Fotina, all who were not mentioned in the Bible, but all saints according to the church. Now, if you aligned with this church, then you were in good company at the time. If not, you were deemed a heretic or a non-Christian. So, I will end every one of these videos in this series with this question: what church would you have belonged to? Is it this church in the first century? Would you have aligned with their beliefs, the popes, the excommunications, and the saints? If not, then where is your church that you would have gone to in order to settle disputes on faith and morals and uphold the truth? And if there is no evidence of your church, does that give you pause that maybe it's because your man-made belief system had not been invented yet? As Catholics, we can rest assured and be confident that we would have aligned with the first century church's beliefs, the popes, the saints who were a part of the church, and the decisions that the church made. We would have belonged to this church in the first century, and that's to be expected since the Catholic Church is Jesus's one true church. Now, We'll take a look at the 2nd century church in my next video and ask the same kind of questions. Until next time, may God bless you on your faith journey.